4,000 years ago, in the river plains of what is now Pakistan and northwest India, a city held more than 40,000 people. It had covered drains running beneath every street. It had brick homes with private bathrooms. It had granaries, public wells, and a bathing pool built with a precision that would not be matched in the region for 1,000 years. But walk through the ruins of Mohenjo-daro today, and you will not find a throne room. You will not find a royal tomb stacked with gold. You will not find a single carved monument boasting the name of a king. For a Bronze Age city this size, that is strange. Every other civilization of its era, Egypt, Mesopotamia, later China, built palaces first and plumbing second, if at all. The Indus did the opposite. And after a century of digging, archaeologists still cannot find the person who was in charge. This is the story of a civilization that may have run one of the largest urban populations in the ancient world without a king. The Indus Valley Civilization, sometimes called the Harappan Civilization after one of its first excavated cities, rose along the Indus River and its tributaries around 2600 BCE. At its peak, it stretched across more than 1 million square kilometers, larger than both Old Kingdom Egypt and Mesopotamia combined. Its cities, Mohenjo-daro and Harappa chief among them, were home to sophisticated engineering, standardized weights used from one end of the civilization to the other, and trade networks reaching as far as the Persian Gulf. And yet, unlike its contemporaries, it left behind no monuments to individual rulers. No sculpture has been found showing a king in triumph. No burial has been uncovered stacked with royal treasure. No temple complex dominates its skyline. This absence has puzzled archaeologists since the first major excavations in the 1920s. Sir John Marshall, who supervised the dig at Mohenjo-daro, noted the contrast directly. Where Egypt and Mesopotamia poured their wealth into temples, tombs, and palaces for the elite, the Indus poured its resources into public infrastructure, drains, wells, bathing platforms, that served ordinary residents. Was this a civilization built on a hidden hierarchy archaeologists simply haven't found yet? Or was it something rarer, a large, complex urban society that functioned without concentrating power in the hands of a ruling class? We don't have the full answer. The Indus script remains undeciphered, so we have no written record in their own words. But the physical evidence tells a story worth examining closely. The Indus Valley Civilization was not discovered gradually. It was discovered almost by accident. In 1856, British engineers building a railway line between Karachi and Lahore needed ballast for the tracks. Workers found an enormous supply of ancient fired bricks near a village called Harappa and used them without a second thought, unknowingly destroying part of a 5,000-year-old city to lay railroad ties. For decades, no one realized what had been lost. The bricks simply became gravel under a colonial railway line. It would take another 7 decades before archaeologists realized what they had walked past. In the 1920s, excavations at Harappa and later at Mohenjo-daro, led by officers of the Archaeological Survey of India, including John Marshall, Rakaldas Bandyopadhyay, and Dayaram Sani, revealed something no one expected: a fully formed urban civilization, contemporary with early Egypt and Sumer, that had been completely unknown to history until that moment. No ancient text, not Greek, not Roman, not even later Indian sources, had preserved its memory. It had simply vanished from human record for 4,000 years. What emerged from the ground stunned the archaeologists working the site. Streets laid out on a grid, running in straight lines with near 90-degree intersections. Brick houses with multiple rooms, built to a standard size ratio used across the entire civilization. A drainage system running beneath the main roads, connecting to individual homes through covered channels, something not seen again in the region until modern plumbing arrived under British and later independent rule. This was not a scattered village culture. This was urban planning on a scale that rivaled anything else on Earth at the time, and in some respects surpassed it. Mohenjo-daro, the best preserved of the major Indus cities, gives us the clearest picture of daily life. The city was divided into a raised citadel area to the west and a lower town spreading out to the east. In most Bronze Age civilizations, the raised defensible section would house the palace and the temple, the seat of both political and religious authority. In Mohenjo-daro, the citadel instead contains a massive public bath, a large pillared assembly hall, and what may have been granaries for storing surplus grain collected from the surrounding farmland. The Great Bath sits at the center of it all, a sunken pool roughly 12 meters long and 7 meters wide, built from bricks set in gypsum mortar, waterproofed with a layer of natural bitumen, fed by a well and drained by a channel large enough to walk through. Historians still debate its exact purpose. Some believe it served a ritual function, perhaps tied to ideas of purification that echo forward into later religious traditions of the subcontinent, where bathing tanks remain central to temple life even today. Others see it as a civic space, something closer to a public institution than a private religious luxury. What stands out is who it served. There is no evidence this pool was reserved for an elite few, guarded behind palace walls the way sacred pools were in other Bronze Age societies. It sits in a public precinct, accessible without a palace attached to it, surrounded by what may have been residential quarters for priests or officials rather than a royal household. Move into the lower town, and the pattern continues. Houses vary in size, but not dramatically. The largest homes in Mohenjo-daro are, at most, comfortable mansions, multi-room houses built around a central courtyard with private wells and bathing areas of their own. None of them approach the scale of a palace. None of them are set apart by fortified walls or guarded compounds the way elite residences were in contemporary Egypt or Mesopotamia. Even more telling, the drainage system, the wells, and the sanitation infrastructure were not luxuries reserved for the wealthy. They ran through ordinary neighborhoods, connecting modest homes to the same engineered network as the larger ones. A craftsman's home and a merchant's home had access to roughly the same standard of engineered comfort, a level of shared infrastructure that many cities would not achieve again for millennia. Here's where the picture gets more complicated, because uniformity does not automatically mean equality. It can also mean control. Across the Indus Valley, from Gujarat in the south to the edges of Afghanistan in the north, archaeologists have found bricks manufactured to a nearly identical ratio, 4:2:1, length to width to height, regardless of which city they came from, separated by hundreds of kilometers, and in some cases, centuries of construction. They have found stone cubicle weights that follow the same standardized binary system across enormous distances, letting merchants in different cities trade using a shared, trusted measure, verifiable with balance scales found at multiple sites. That level of consistency across a civilization spanning more than 1 million square kilometers does not happen by accident. Someone or some system was coordinating it, enforcing it, and maintaining it across generations. This is the paradox at the heart of the Indus Valley. The infrastructure suggests real organizational power. The ability to enforce standards, plan cities before construction began, and manage large-scale water systems requiring long-term maintenance. But that power left no face, no name, no monument celebrating the individual or institution responsible for it. Archaeologist Adam Green, in a widely discussed 2020 study titled "Killing the Priest King," argued that this isn't a gap in the evidence. It may be the evidence itself. His case is that complex societies do not require a ruling class that monopolizes wealth and resources to function. The Indus, in his reading, achieved coordination through some other means: shared cultural or religious norms, decentralized councils of merchants or craft guilds, or institutions we simply don't have a name for, rather than a monarchy imposing order from the top down. Other historians remain unconvinced, arguing that the absence of a palace does not prove the absence of power. It may only prove that Indus elites expressed authority differently than their neighbors did, in ways archaeology hasn't learned to read yet. A small stone bust known as the Priest King, found at Mohenjo-daro and depicting a bearded man in a robe, has long been used to argue for some form of religious or political elite, though its name is largely a modern label rather than a confirmed title. There is also the question of violence, which complicates any simple picture of a peaceful, egalitarian utopia. Early excavators at Mohenjo-daro found scattered human skeletons in the streets and interpreted them as victims of a final massacre, feeding a popular theory that the city fell to invasion. Later, more careful analysis found that these skeletons came from different archaeological layers, spanning different periods, and showed no consistent pattern of a single violent event. Most historians today reject the massacre theory entirely, but isolated evidence of interpersonal violence and unequal burial treatment does exist at some sites. A reminder that no kings is not the same as no conflict. Both positions in this debate rely on the same frustrating limitation. The Indus script, found stamped on thousands of small steatite seals, has never been deciphered. It may record trade transactions, or names and titles, or religious formulas, or something else entirely. Until it is read, any claim about who held power in Indus society is, at some level, an informed guess dressed up as a conclusion. Whatever the political structure was, daily life in the Indus cities was defined by trade, craft, and agriculture, carried out at a scale that required real coordination to function. Farmers in the surrounding plains grew wheat, barley, peas, and sesame, and, notably early for the region, cotton, which Indus weavers turned into cloth centuries before cotton textiles appeared in Mesopotamia. Cattle were central to both agriculture and diet, and appear repeatedly on carved seals alongside other animals, such as elephants, rhinoceroses, and tigers, suggesting a landscape far wetter and more forested than the region is today. Merchants moved goods by river barge along the Indus, and by ox cart overland, carrying carnelian beads, ivory, timber, and finished textiles toward the coast, where port towns like Lothal, complete with what may be an early tidal dock, connected the civilization to maritime trade routes running toward the Persian Gulf and Mesopotamia. Indus seals, beads, and pottery have turned up in excavations as far away as Sumerian cities, and Mesopotamian texts refer to a trading partner called Meluha, which many scholars identify with the Indus civilization itself. Inside the cities, craftsmen worked in dedicated quarters. Bead makers, potters, metalworkers, shell workers, each cluster of workshops positioned near the raw materials or water sources they needed. The famous Indus seals, small carved stones depicting animals like bulls, unicorn-like creatures, and elephants alongside undeciphered script, were likely used to stamp ownership onto goods moving through this trade network, functioning much like a merchant signature or a mark of quality control. Religion, as best we can infer from surviving artifacts, seems to have centered on fertility, water, and animal symbolism, rather than the god kings common elsewhere in the ancient world. Terracotta figurines of a mother goddess type, found in large numbers across Indus sites, suggest a fertility cult woven into everyday household practice rather than confined to grand temples. One seal shows a horned figure seated in a cross-legged position, resembling later yogic postures, surrounded by animals, an image some scholars connect to the later Hindu deity Shiva in his form as Pashupati, Lord of Animals, though this connection remains contested rather than confirmed. The sheer scale and prominence of the Great Bath, more than any single temple, points toward a spiritual life connected to purification and the natural world. Though again, without the script, this remains informed interpretation rather than confirmed fact. Around 1900 BCE, the great cities of the Indus began to decline. And here too, the civilization defies the pattern set by its neighbors, who typically fell to war, conquest, or dynastic collapse. There is no clear archaeological evidence of the Indus cities being destroyed in a violent conquest, despite an older theory, now largely abandoned by scholars, that blamed the collapse on invading Indo-Aryan tribes sweeping in from Central Asia. What the evidence increasingly points toward instead is environmental and climatic change. Tectonic shifts and long-term changes in monsoon patterns appear to have altered the course of the Indus River system and significantly weakened the Ghaggar-Hakra River, on which many Indus settlements, including the large city of Gunwariwala, depended for irrigation and drinking water. As the rivers that fed their agriculture and trade shifted course or dried up entirely, the great cities gradually lost the population base, the surplus grain, and the economic activity that had sustained them for centuries. Rather than a sudden fall, most current research describes a slow unraveling that played out over generations. Populations moving east toward the Ganges, plain and south into Gujarat, city life fragmenting into smaller rural and village settlements, urban infrastructure like the Great Bath and the drainage network abandoned not by invasion, but by simple necessity, as the resources needed to maintain them disappeared. Some cultural threads, particularly in religion, craft techniques, and trade practices, likely persisted and fed into the societies that followed in the Indian subcontinent, even as the great cities themselves emptied out and were slowly buried by dust and time. The Indus Valley Civilization is not a settled story. It's an open case built on physical evidence and missing text, argued over by archaeologists who agree on the data, but not always on what it means. What we can say with confidence: for roughly 700 years, a civilization spanning more than 1 million square kilometers built cities with sophisticated planning, shared standards, and public infrastructure, without leaving behind the palaces, royal tombs, or monuments to individual rulers that defined every other major Bronze Age power from the Nile to the Euphrates. What we cannot say with confidence, whether that absence reflects a genuinely different form of social organization, one that solved the problem of large-scale coordination without kings, or simply a form of power we haven't yet learned to recognize in the ground, hidden behind a script we still cannot read. Until the Indus script is deciphered, the truth will stay buried with the cities themselves, silent, standardized, and stubbornly anonymous.